it's not really. Bringing on a connection I met at this year's Podfest. Shout out to Chris K for another incredible Podfest. And today, Shirlee is a former TV reporter turned entrepreneur and coach. She's learned how to harness the power of storytelling and video to build a brand. We're going to talk all about the pain points and challenges, everything in between. So Shirlee, thank you for joining That Entrepreneur Show.
Oh, thanks so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
I'm excited to have you. For more context, everyone, I met Shirlee at Podfest. She had a great talk, introduced myself, and she highlighted a bunch of areas I could have used some help with. And even after all these years, there's always so much learning to do. So we're going to learn a lot of podcast tools today as well. But first, welcome everyone to That Entrepreneur Show. Thank you for tuning in each week to keep this show a top 2.5% global show. Can't do it without you listening, and can't do it without the amazing guests like Shirlee today. So thank you. First time with us, no worries. This is the show that helps you learn in an industry with no textbook, no blueprint. Entrepreneurship is built off learning from other successful entrepreneurs. And today we're bringing on Shirlee to do just that. And before we dive in, let's show love to John Ford, our show partner. Head to theempathyset.com. He has a brand new empathy app, and as entrepreneurs, we need to remember to prioritize our mental health. So check that out. And also Coming Alive podcastproduction.com to start your journey today in podcasting. But Shirlee, we're going back to the beginning. What led you to want to become an entrepreneur?
Oh, such a good question. I always swore I would never be an entrepreneur. And the reason for that is because growing up, both of my parents were entrepreneurs and we rode the roller coaster. I mean, it was, there were ups, incredible ups. And then there were also slumps that even as a kid, I felt deeply. So my mission was go into the workforce, work for someone else. So I did that. I did about 20 years in journalism and communications. And then I think like a lot of entrepreneurs who are sort of second career entrepreneurs during the pandemic, I started to really feel creatively dead inside is probably the best way I could describe it. And so I started taking interior design courses, which may sound like totally out of left field, but growing up with architecture, design, real estate, my parents' professions, it actually was something that was near and dear to me. So I ended up launching a side hustle, became an entrepreneur, and that blossomed into a full-time business. But very quickly, people started to ask me, how are you getting on TV? How are you getting on stages and podcasts? And how are you so natural on camera? So I started coaching people, and then that kind of blossomed into the business that I focus on today. I still have an interior design business, but it's one of those things like once you become an entrepreneur, the floodgates are open and you see opportunity everywhere. And now I say to people, I'm unemployable. Like I can't work for anyone else for the rest of my life because I've tasted what it's like. And even with the ups and downs, I would never go back.
Truly inspirational message. And everyone out there, you are great at something. You have tools and resources right in front of you. Please tap into that. Look how that little pivot launched a second business, and now she's thriving because she has something very big coming out. And we're going to touch on that in just a little bit. But you mentioned something important, especially for the early entrepreneurs tuning in, the ups and downs. Describe what that's like as an entrepreneur now that you're in the field yourself.
Yeah, I think the biggest part for me that, to be honest, I still struggle with because this never goes away,
Of course,
is when you're a perfectionist, like so many of us are, you really want to have that absolutely perfect product before you launch, before you get out there. But very early on, I sought out coaching myself, and I realized that the absolute number one thing you need when you're starting a business is sales, is clients. You don't have a business if you don't have people paying you for what you're doing. So as much as you want the product to be perfect and you're like, oh, it's not good enough, I don't want to sell it, I want to talk about it. And I see so many entrepreneurs and clients that I work with who are doing amazing things, but they haven't even been out there talking about it yet. Cause they're like, well, I have to launch my business before I like go out there and start getting visible and talking about it. It's actually the other way around. So I would say the hardest thing for me was putting it out there. The first course I did, I basically did as a beta, and I did it live with people. So like I had a plan, but it wasn't fully baked. And people knew that coming in. You don't lie to people, obviously, but realizing that you can actually get people to invest in what you're doing before you've done it. And that way you're not constantly operating from this place of scarcity and lack. That was a really big epiphany for me. But really the hardest thing about starting a business is you go, especially if you've been in corporate or you've worked for someone else, you go from a steady paycheck to riding the roller coaster. You don't know where your next, you don't know if you're going to have a 10K month. You don't know if you're going to have a negative month. So having the stamina and the mindset and the faith to work even through those times, I think is what sets apart those who succeed and those who ultimately say, you know what, this is too hard.
Very, very well said. And there's going to be ups and downs. And I recently read this book, Fanatical Prospecting, because my MacBook went down. And as an entrepreneur, that's hell, right? That happened. I've turned it in. So I made use of this book. And it really encourages you that you pay the price 90 days out from what you're doing today. So if you slack on doing any sales outreach today, then you're paying for it 3 months in entrepreneurship. At least you have to be mindful of those ups and downs. But I'd love to ask you now, you spent so many years as a successful TV reporter and you transitioned now to the storytelling business. Let's talk about how you use those tools as well right in front of you and started leveraging it to have this thriving practice.
Yes, the biggest thing was 20 years in the trenches learning broadcast communications. So many entrepreneurs and people I work with, they've got the LinkedIn lingo going, right? They're leveraging this and uncovering that, and they speak in these like predictable sentences, and that leads to you communicating in a very sing-songy kind of way, right? So all your sentences are the same length. All of your words are kind of complex. It's not the way people actually talk. Well, what broadcast journalism beat into me more than anything else was how fragile and scarce attention spans are, even before social media, even before now, 2 seconds or something. I mean, I would have to distill everything I learned about a certain issue that day into 2 minutes, and the producers didn't care. They're like, I'm like, oh, but it's 2 minutes and 10 seconds. I don't care. Cut out 10 seconds. There's no 10 seconds to cut. There's always something to cut. So learning how to communicate concisely, effectively, and how to speak like people actually talk, because there's a big difference in how you speak on video to how you speak in writing. Right. And there's starting to be less of a gap between those two things, especially on social media, because people are starting to read the way they listen. But that was the biggest thing, I think, that was a benefit going in, was obviously having the on-camera presence, because that's a big part of communicating and showing up, but knowing how to speak, like what to say and what to say to get people to actually pay attention is a huge one.
I love everything about that. Well, let's go back in time now when you're starting out in that 20 years in the trenches, learning everything. What was the hardest part for you, whether it was camera presence or something else in the industry, to help our other viewers out here?
Yeah, I think that, well, there were a couple things. The biggest thing was when I first started, and entrepreneurs can probably relate to this one, I was doing everything. I was the reporter. I was the camera person. I was the person on camera. I was the editor. I was the writer. I was a videographer. And so I had to basically walk and chew gum and juggle and run at the same time. And that was a really good boot camp for me to very quickly learn all of the aspects of video storytelling. And then obviously the on-camera part, and a lot of entrepreneurs can relate to this. And maybe, you think the first time you stepped in front of a camera to talk, not to your family, but to people, it's very unnatural.
Yes, it is.
Like I'm sitting here looking at a green light, and the hardest thing is to make eye contact with that lens. And then as you develop, it's about connecting through that lens and not just speaking to the camera, but actually connecting with the camera. And so that was something that I honed over years and years. But what I've been really, what was most surprising to me when I became an entrepreneur is that I actually had to unlearn a lot of that.
Let's talk about it.
Yes. So being a reporter, if you've watched the news, not allowed to have an opinion. I don't know, these days that's changed, but when I was a journalist, we were neutral. And you had to, keep your head straight. You had to speak in a certain way. Reporters have a certain way of speaking. Like that doesn't fly on Instagram or YouTube or LinkedIn.
That's
Nobody
funny.
wanted to hear because you're not that know, like, and trust factor and that authenticity and relatability.
Yep.
I had to learn how to let my guard down. And that was confronting, even for someone who'd
Yeah.
been on camera for a long time. And so it was a bit of a rude awakening because I think I was at the beginning, I was like, oh, this video thing, I can do this. I've been doing this for 20 years. Well, guess what? I had a rude awakening. I was starting just like everyone else. And I had to learn the way to market because the big difference between journalism and marketing, advertising, sales is even though in journalism you're like selling the story, you're trying to get people to watch and listen, it's just different. Like you're not trying, it's not a marketing thing. So
Sure.
marketing is a whole other skill set that I had to learn and I'm still learning because I think we never stop learning that.
Oh, I couldn't agree more. It's super hard to learn, and you always, for me at least, trial and error, seeing what works, bringing on people now as the business grows, because I'm not good at everything. It's impossible. There's certain things others are better at, and that's one of those areas. Did you ever think when you were a kid that you'd be doing what you did today?
No, no. I mean, first of all, online business didn't even exist when I was a kid.
I mean,
And
more of like a news personality, TV presence.
well, yes, yeah, and it's interesting because I'm not sure if there was way back in the day the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. It
Yep.
was the movie that came out. I know there's been an iteration now. There's a reporter in that show named April O'Neil, and she would always wear a yellow suit. And so when I was a kid, I remember there was this one vacation we took in Boston, and my dad had his video camera, and his big video camera out, and I was dressed in like a yellow jumpsuit, and I had a fake microphone and I would walk around the city and like do reports where we were. And so I think that was always in my blood. And even when I became an entrepreneur and I became an interior designer and I started getting out there and getting visible, I realized that that was a big part of the job that I loved. So it does really, dovetail nicely into what I'm doing right now, which is helping other entrepreneurs have that, like find that spotlight, find their inner celebrity, get visible, and really get out there and build an audience and a following of people who genuinely want to hear what they have to say and really want to work with them because they become these personalities that they can relate to.
We're going to do just that. Now we've gotten through the first two phases of the show. We learned why she's here. We learned about right now, but she just said she wants to help you. So we're going to let her do that. After this, we're going to find out about her release today, something really, really cool she's been working on, but she can teach you the best way to actually get on media, get on podcasts and stages to grow your visibility and brand. Let's touch on that. And then we're diving all into your big, big release.
Yeah, awesome. I'm excited. I'm an open book. Ask me anything.
So what's the best way to get on media for people listening on right now, get on podcasts? Where can they start?
Yeah, so the place to start is before you even pitch. So many people, and I can tell you, having been on the receiving end of a lot of pitches, more pitches than I can ever remember over the years, you've got to have your story straight. You've got to know what it is that you bring to the audience. So the first thing is, what is your message? What is your story? And why should people care? That's a tough one to swallow, right? Like, why should I care? And not, you have this new product or you have this service or you're able to do this. But just like when you're trying to speak to your ideal clients through social media and through your messaging, think about it. People are always thinking about themselves, and so are the media outlets. So, what type of show is it? Are you tailoring your pitch to the show? And what you have to say, is it timely? Is there some kind of event going on? Maybe it's a holiday. When I was going out there doing design stuff, it would be like, oh, how to refresh your house for spring because the first day of spring was coming up. Or, if there's a big day in the calendar, like if your offer is somehow tied to the holidays and, can you relate it to that? Knowing their audience. What does their audience want? And so many times people will try to get on the news, but like, is that really the right place for you? And thinking as a business strategically, just getting on TV, I mean, it's great to have that logo on your website and be able to have bragging rights. But sometimes you're better off going for a smaller publication or a smaller local morning show, just to get out there and get in front of the people you actually need to be in front of. And while we're on that subject, I remember recently an entrepreneur came to me and said, I want to be on Good Morning America, the big show in the States. And I said, oh, have you been on television before? No. Have you done anything like this before? No. Do you really want the Good Morning America to be your very first debut? I would encourage you to cut your teeth on the smaller shows, just like podcast appearances, right?
Simple, yeah.
Refine, and not just that, but your message is more likely to resonate there. And what do you think producers are going to do when you pitch them? The first thing they're going to do is look you up on social media, look you up on Google, look you up on YouTube and see, like, what are some examples? They don't even have to talk to you anymore. They can see your online presence. So if you haven't taken the time to build your visibility one brick at a time, the chances of you getting on a show that big, unless you're like, curing cancer or something, that it is really, really, really competitive. And so that's something that I like to encourage people to do, is start small and build your way up, because one visibility opportunity builds on another, builds on another.
Amazingly said. Your first impression is your first impression, especially on a news segment where the ideal circumstances you attract business from this, and you're going to want to share this show. If you're stuttering on your words, you sound confused, you don't know your pitch, you haven't got practice of your pitch. Like, how many interviews do you think you've done now over the course of your career? In the thousands, probably.
Oh, God, probably
practicing, refining it. And you see how clear she's speaking today, how she's on her game. She's able to serve you, and she's given value throughout the show. And now might be the biggest value add of all. She's got her new release. We've planned this episode strategically to come out for today. Let's talk about it.
Yeah. So one of the biggest things that entrepreneurs need in this day and age, like I said, people are going to go look you up, is what some people don't know what this is called. It's a sizzle reel. So a sizzle reel is basically like, if you want to go to the movies and you're looking to, what are we going to watch today? What are you going to do? You're going to watch the trailer and you're going to be like, I want to see that movie. So does your business have a trailer? A sizzle reel. So we've put together a 5-day challenge that is going to be beginning to end, creating your sizzle reel in just 5 days. So that's everything from the idea to the script to filming it, editing it, getting it out there. So many people put this off, and they also think it has to be this huge production where, you can have different iterations of this, but we've done this before, and it's just always so exciting to see entrepreneurs be able to put together this sizzle reel, because it also really forces you to zero in on your message, on your key value proposition, and it helps introduce you to new audiences. And there's lots of great ways you can use a sizzle reel. So that's something exciting that we've put together for entrepreneurs. And really, no matter what kind of business you have, it's something you need to have in your toolbox.
Well, everyone, stick around for just a few more minutes. We're going to find out exactly where to find that. I'm going to drop the link in the episode description, so be sure to finish the episode, go there, sign up, and then follow her online. We're going to find out where to in just a second. But now it's time to end the show with my favorite question. If you could choose any entrepreneur, dead or alive, Shirlee, to sit down with, pick their brain, who are you choosing?
Oh boy, there are so many. I mean, I think Alex Hormozi comes to mind.
He's just hot right now.
A guru in the get scrappy and build anything kind of phase. And so he's someone that I've listened to a lot. He has a lot of that bro side, which, sometimes feels a little bit like burnout inducing, but I just eat up everything I see him put out there. And there are so many more, but he's the first one that comes to mind for sure.
Can't argue with the choice, but let's delve deeper. Where would the sit down take place if you could choose that too?
Ooh, well, I mean, Bali would be nice, like on a beach.
Nice
I have
and relaxed.
of organizing a retreat for entrepreneurs in Bali. So maybe he could come to that and be one of my guests.
Wow, there we go. We'll have to tag away on this show. But Shirlee, thank you so much for stopping by That Entrepreneur Show. Now, where can we find you online? What's the website, LinkedIn? Where can we find this amazing opportunity for a sizzle reel?
Yeah, so sizzlereelschool.com. So that's where
Ooh,
we're
way
going
to
to go
go.
register. I'm most active these days on YouTube. So if you look up Shirlee Engel, Shirlee with 2 E's, Engel on YouTube, and we can link that in the show notes.
Yeah, please.
Lots of great videos. I have a podcast, the Camera Confident podcast, where we also do it on video. So it's also on YouTube. So that's really the best one-stop shop to catch up with everything I'm doing and hear more about everything camera confidence, video, visibility, getting on media, podcasts, and stages. And I also talk a lot about how to use AI to make all of this easier and more streamlined.
Oh, she's got a lot to offer. We just got a taste of all the great things she can do today. So please go out there, follow her, check her out on YouTube. She's got the LinkedIn. She's got it all. Everyone, thank you for tuning into That Entrepreneur Show. We are on all social media at our name here at thatentrepreneurshow.com. My name is Vincent A. Lancey, and you can find me on all social media at my name or vincentalancey.com. And one more time for our show partners, johnford.com or theempathyset.com. He has his empathy card set, empathy app to help entrepreneurs get through the day. And of course, Coming Alive podcastproduction.com to start your journey today. But with that, we're signing off today. Shirlee, thank you for connecting with me after podcast and Podfest, excuse me. End of the episode, Jibbers here. And thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you so much for having me. This was so much fun. We'll have to have you on our podcast too.
You heard that, everyone. Be on the lookout for that, and we'll be blasting that on our social media so when it happens. But again, thank you for tuning in and keeping the show a top 2.5% global show. Shirlee absolutely crushed it today, and we'll see you next week right here on That Entrepreneur Show.